Access Project 7 may be one of the most useful projects you'll do for this class, and certainly with this textbook. And what it involves is using, in a database, using the language or the commands for SQL, or often referred to as SQL. And in essence, for this project, you're actually going to create 26 small little queries. And don't get overwhelmed by thinking 26, because they are easily built on each other, and by the end of the 26 you'll learn a pretty substantial amount of how you can write queries by using the language SQL. Very useful tool in the computer field, so make sure that you include this on your resume, that you have some experience with databases and using SQL. What I'm going to do is just set up and do a couple demonstrations of how this is done. I'm not going to do all 26 because the book goes through and it really goes in depth on how to do this. But the first thing you may want to do, you don't have to do this, but the book has you, with your database open, go under Options, under File, and under Object Designers. You can actually change the size of your font. I'll change mine to 12 just to make it a little easier to see for somebody that needs a little bit of a bigger font to read some things. Now the next part is I'm going to do a couple examples of how you set up a query and do your SQL language. If you know how to make queries from other previous experience with Access, it's similar, but there's a major difference that shifts here that gives you some extra power. Under the Create tab, I'm going to go under Queries and go to Query Design. Now, what you could do if you're setting up a query is you could choose the table and do various things on this graphical interface, but I'm actually going to close this as the book instructs us. And over here on the left, under View, I'm going to open up the SQL view. And this is basically where you'll put in the code that will set up your query. I'm just going to do the first couple examples. I'm actually on page 424, and I'm going to type the code in figure 7.5a. And you got to be very particular, because if you have a typo or something isn't exactly right, it will come back and it will give you an error, or it won't give you the correct results. So if you don't get the correct results, make sure you're putting in the items exactly how they are in the book. And now I'm putting this in, and I'll explain what this means here after I get these lines put in. Okay, what this first line does is I'm selecting the fields. These fields are inside of square brackets. Make sure you use square brackets. The capitalization is not essential as far as I'm concerned. It's just kind of a convention that's followed, where the command select is all uppercase and the fields begin with capital letters. You can experiment and try, and I've done this just to kind of see if it has a problem with that. But again, the convention is to use this format. So what this is doing, it's selecting these four fields. Where's it going to select them from? Well, the next line is the command from, and we put which table, which is client, and then the last thing it has to end with is a semicolon. If you forget semicolon, again, it'll give you an error message. Once you get your code set up this way, to test it out, hit the run button, and it will give you the results of your query. Now, if you make a mistake, you can always start over again, but rather than start over again, if I want to go back to my view, I can go under View and go to SQL View, and it takes me back to my code. So I can then rerun it again if there's an error, or I want to take something away, or something along that line. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually save. Let me do it this way, just to show a good way to do this. I'm going to go to File, Save Object As, and I'm going to save this. They call it. They tell us to name it CH7Q1, which is Chapter 7, Query 1. And please use that naming convention throughout the other queries. And now what this will do is, if you look down through the queries, there's other things that come in from previous projects. But here's Chapter 7, Query 1. If I open it up, it shows me my results. Again, I can go under SQL View and modify that if I want. Use that to your advantage, because later on, rather than retyping all 26, you can actually build from previous queries using them copying and paste. Let me just do the second one here real quick. And this is on page 426. This just is kind of a short one, and notice I'm doing a building off of the previous one. I'm going to select asterisk, and what that means, that's a wild card that means it will take all fields, okay, and then from client. So what the first query did is it just took selected fields. This will do all fields from the client table. Hit run, and notice it has all the fields there. Okay, and that wildcard asterisk just again, each step they kind of give you a couple new commands and a couple new ideas about this. So I'm going to go again, File, Save Object As. I'm going to call this Chapter 7 Q2. Back to Home. And there, again, you'll notice these down in the list. When I go to Grady's, I'll make sure you have all 26 of them there. And that's basically how you set up and do your SQL queries throughout Project 7. And again, they build on them, and there will be 26 total. And this is this basic format on how this can be done.